In my vlog, Kitab Sir al-Asar, the Emerald Tamrat Myth and Fabrication, I talk about my deep admiration for Thoth, or Hermes Trismegistus, as I prefer to call him. I also expose how the Emerald Tablets of Thoth was written by former Theosophist Maurice Doreal and has very little to do with Thoth himself. The same could be said for the Kybalion by William Walker Atkinson. I now find a similar trail of deceit behind the Book of Thoth. In my vlog on the Emerald Tablets, I question our understanding of who Thoth was. Certainly he was an Egyptian god, but then how could he have written anything that is attributed to him? Even the most dogmatic of Muslims would not claim Al-Quran to have been written by Allah. Then what of Hermes Trismegistus? Is he simply the Hellenic equivalent of Thoth? Hermes Trismegistus is at best a Hellenic interpretation of Thoth, maybe simply a Neo-Platonic representation of Egyptian religions in general. It is this reinterpretation which I trace in this vlog on the Book of Thoth. Like the Emerald Tablets, there is so much mystery and downright fabrication. This is a difficult vlog to follow, that I've attempted to simplify whilst retaining some of the potential misdirections. Inevitably, in simplifying, I will have included errors for which I must apologise. Thoth is the Egyptian god of wisdom, reading, writing, and some claim magic. He was thought to be a successor of the sun god Ra. He's almost always illustrated as a human with the head of an ibis bird, in common with Egyptian gods who were associated with what we might see as familiars. According to ancient legends, Thoth invented writing and always recorded every gathering of the gods. He's also said to have created the Holy Book of Breath, which along with the Book of the Dead was placed in the tombs since it possessed the magical powers. The power which Thoth gifted was endless and promised happiness as well as suffering. The Book of Thoth was allegedly written in length and in width on papyrus, and according to legend, it was written by God himself. The book promised eternal power. The book became known throughout much of the ancient world. But the Book of Thoth is a name given to many ancient Egyptian texts, supposed to have been written by Thoth. These include many texts that were claimed to exist by ancient authors and a magical book that appears in an Egyptian work of fiction. The Egyptian historian Manetho claimed that Thoth wrote 36,525 books. Clement of Alexandria, in the sixth book of his work Stromata, mentions 42 books used by Egyptian priests that he said contain the whole philosophy of the Egyptians. According to Clement, all were written by Hermes, whom he describes the Greek god that the Greeks likened to Thoth. The Book of Thoth appears in an ancient Egyptian short story from the Ptolemaic period, known as Setna Kwamas Nene Kapath, or Setne the First. The book allegedly written by Thoth contains two spells, one which allows the reader to understand the speech of animal, and one which allows the reader to perceive the gods themselves. The story reflects the Egyptian belief that the gods' knowledge is not meant for humans to possess, or you could say it's occulted. This has been extrapolated to the Book of Thoth being somewhat elusive, Egyptian grimoire, or even a set of prophecies. The Demonic Book of Thoth is a long dialogue between Thoth and a mortal named He Who Loves Knowledge that was written in the Demotic script on around 30 papyrus scrolls from the Graeco-Roman period, which was 332 BCE to 395 CE. The text discussed various aspects of the gods and their sacred animals, the underworld, wisdom, prophecy, and temple ritual. Whilst these papyri certainly discuss issues of life and death and the gods, They certainly provide an interesting insight into Egyptian religions, and indeed the netherworld, but it's far from being a grimoire. Translation from the Egyptian language and concepts to the Greek language and concepts was at best inaccurate, to the point of being near fabrication. Amongst the subjects they cover are hymns, rituals, temple construction, astrology, geography and medicine. These certainly could have been influenced by the Demotic Book of Thoth, which was then reinterpreted with a Neo-Platonic veneer. The Greek Book of Thoth, like the Egyptian, was largely lost due to the suppression of pagan knowledge by the Church. Although this suppression certainly did not mean that in the West in medieval times was devoid of all Neo-Platonic thought, as many suggest. Then the Corpus Hermeticus was translated to Latin during the Renaissance. The Corpus Hermeticum is a collection of 17 Greek writings whose authorship is traditionally attributed to the legendary Hellenistic figure Hermes Trismegistus. They were reputedly originally written between around 10 and 300 CE, but the collection as known today was first compiled by medieval Byzantine editors. It was then translated into Latin in the 15th century by Marsilio Ficini, 1433 to 1499, and Ludovico Lazzarelli, 1447 to 1500. The Corpus Hermeticum does not appear to have been influenced by the Demotic Book of Thoth and seems to cover completely different issues. Nevertheless, the structure of the texts are similar. Both contain references which only make sense in ancient Egyptian or Coptic, suggesting that both at least have an Egyptian core somewhere within their origin. The discovery of the Corpus Hermeticism had an explosive influence on thinking in the West. It was this translation which was part of the reintroduction of interest in Neo-Platonism to the West and began the movement that has come to be called Hermeticism. It re-established beliefs and relationships between God and man, in particular our need to co-create, in sharp contrast to the medieval church's theology. Indeed, such thinking strongly influenced radical thinkers embodied in organisations such as the Freemasons. Thus, so many rituals within Freemasonry are inspired by what they believed were the beliefs of ancient Egypt, particularly the notion of rebirth and Thoth. I have often repeated that Hermeticism blends Neoplatonism with personal alchemy, which I stand by, but I need to add some caveats in the light of researching this vlog. Indeed, I've been heavily influenced by Hermeticism, always believed in it to have an ancient Egyptian source. Antoine Cour, who named himself Antoine Cour de Gebelin, 25th of January 1725 to 10th of May 1784, was a Protestant pastor born in Nîmes who initiated the interpretation of tarot as a repository of esoteric wisdom in 1781. From the first time he saw the tarot deck, he believed that it held the secrets of the Egyptians, that the tarot were really the original Book of Thoth. Thus began the myth that tarot originated in Egypt. An itinerant salesman and fortune teller known as Etiella developed this into a technique for reading the tarot, and a practice of tarot reading was born. Etiella was a pseudonym for John Baptiste Alliette, 1st of March 1738 to 12th of December 1791, a French occultist who was the first to develop an interpretation concept for the tarot cards. Etiella also influenced the French divination professional Marie-Anne Leomard Etiella developed his own tarot deck based on what he saw as a true wisdom of Thoth. This began the belief that the tarot can be used to divine the future, based on the erroneous view that the Book of Thoth was a book of prophecies. And despite knowing this, I will always slip into divination, as such ideas are now so deeply ingrained within our thoughts and practice. The Book of Thoth, a short essay on tarot of the Egyptians, is the title of the Equinox, Volume 3, Number 5, by Aleister Crowley. This describes the philosophy and the use of Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, a deck of cards designed by Crowley himself and co-designed and painted by Lady Freda Harris. The Thoth Tarot has become one of the best-selling and most popular tarot decks in the world. Crowley believed that the tarot to be a true embodiment of the Egyptian Book of Thoth, rather than the article which introduces the tarot. However, in reality, the Thoth Tarot is an introduction to Thelema. Thelema is Crowley's spiritual philosophy, as well as a new religious movement. Crowley's system begins with the Book of Law, a text he said was dictated to him by a non-corporal entity named Aiwass, although many believed that Crowley ultimately saw this as coming from Thoth. Central to Thelema is the idea of discovering and following one's true will, a unique purpose and calling that goes beyond ordinary desire. And magic is a core practice within Thelema, encompassing a wide range of physical, mental and spiritual exercises. It's viewed as a means to uncover one's true will, to enact change in alignment with it. The Book of Law lays out key principles. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This emphasises personal freedom and the pursuit of one's true path, while being guided by love and finding one's authentic purpose. Every man and every woman is a star is a reference to the body of light, said by Plato to be composed of the same substance as the stars. That people in doing their wills are thereby like stars in the universe, occupying time, space, a position in space, yet distinctively individual and having an independent nature, largely without undue conflict with other stars. Love is the law, love under will, i.e. the nature of the law of Familia is love, which Crowley wrote should be understood in the sense of the Greek word agape, which like Thelema kabbalistically sums to 93. The phrase love under will is often abbreviated to 93, suggesting that love under will is unity. Whilst Thelema is clearly influenced by what is believed to have been written by Thoth, and especially Hellenic Neo-Platonism, it is much more closely aligned with the Golden Dawn, whom Crowley was a member of. Crowley, along with Theosophical and New Age interpretations of Thoth, were mixed during the counterculture of the 1960s. Thus Thoth became associated with psychedelics and free love as a means of self-realization. So by the 1960s, we have a complex web surrounding the Book of Thoth, all claiming some authenticity. Fragments of papyri, including the Demotic Book of Thoth, written in both Demotic and hieroglyphics, have been appearing, which may shed some light on the original contents of the Book of Thoth, not least as it's explicitly mentioned within some of them. Far from being a grimoire or divination, they cover much more mundane issues. Religion and science are applied to everyday issues, which could be interpreted as magic. But this is far away from the ceremonial magic supposedly influenced by the Book of Thoth. Indeed, we could see them as closer to superstitions as prayers than magic as such. What definitely is not in these fragments are any references to the tarot or the principles of Crowley's Thelema. Whilst there are some elements which were developed by Neo-Platonism, it's devoid of the personal alchemy which has been so influential, which has so influenced me. Furthermore, despite referencing the Book of Thoth, they seem to be referring to collective knowledge of Egyptian religions and not a single book. So as someone so influenced by Hermeticism, where do I now stand? I must say I feel a little cheated. I was first taken in by William Walter Atkinson, then diverted by the Emerald Tablets and the Book of Thoth, believing that Crowley had to be more than simply a narcissist fabricating almost everything he wrote. That I found a resonance between supposedly Egyptian religions, Neo-Platonism, personal alchemy, magic and tarot is no coincidence, as this traces the route by which these myths have flown. But then this very resonance which convinced me of their authenticity, as all good sea theories do. Indeed, aren't we all duped by theories that we can half follow, which seem to solve the meaning of life? Well, now I realise that it is the Greek Neoplatonist tradition which has really influenced me, and I should drop any illusion of an Egyptian provenance. Perhaps this doesn't matter, apart from my shame at being duped once more. But what I find more shocking is that all this would seem to question the authenticity of the Western magical tradition coming from ancient Egypt and Thoth. Many would argue that I should look further back to Mesopotamia, but somehow I think close investigation would reveal a similar sleight of hand. Thoth appears to have been used by medieval commentators as a justification to share their deepest and darkest fears of the unknown. And yes, we could conclude that Thoth has been abused to construct a Western magical tradition, which begins in medieval and Renaissance Europe and was developed by the Victorians, in particular the Golden Dawn. But then so many things I research begin as medieval myths and are then expounded by Victorian gentlemen with a desire to convince us that theirs is the true path, regardless of its provenance or authenticity. And yes, I could include in this those hardline interpretations of Islam I so often find myself at odds with.